Okay, recording in progress. Continue. Okay, I repeat. All right. So let's start now. Officially welcome Wouter to the second part. And welcome everyone. I'm happy to see you again, to see that you're still here, you're still interested, participating actively. I hope it was face-to-face, but it's not in my hand, so we made the best out of it. So as you know, today our day is about the interface between science and policy. Many of you already said it's an interesting topic. So I hope you had the time to have a look at the recorded interview, and also to read. I hope you had the time also to read the two articles or resources that we shared with you. One was about the advisory panel and its scope of work in Egypt, and the other one that we shared as mandatory reading was about the European experience with science policy interface to cope with drought in particular. And you probably have noticed that the authors of both of this paper, or one of the authors, is Wouter. So he is here with us.
Present.
And yeah, this means that if you have a question not only about the interview, but also about what's in this paper, you can actually ask him because he knows the best about it. So in the beginning, let's try to use this hour to 1 hour and a half, depending on how energetic you are, how many questions you have. Let's see how long we stay, and you can ask him question, and we see how we go with the discussion. So if you have question, you can. We're not too many, so you can either just raise your hand or write your name in the chat, and then I will give the floor to you. So yeah, that's what we will do. Wouter, would you like to say anything for the participants about this topic in general, about what does it mean to you, also from your previous job, like because you worked a lot on it?
Yeah, well, for me, it means a lot because, for instance, when I was in, maybe I talked about it a lot, I don't know, but I worked in Pakistan also for 4 years, and it was a big World Bank project. And initially, there was the project was of the size $220 million, and then someone intervened and said, no, we have to make a two-phased approach. First phase and the second phase. In the first phase, we do the no regret options, things that you have to do anyhow, and we do research on what is needed actually for the second phase. So there was the option that some of the measures contemplated in the original project were going to be investigated, and if it was not successful, it could be stopped after phase 1. So there was a kind of a certain type of drainage in Pakistan, interceptor drainage, and our studies showed that it was not a good idea to do it. And already a lot of money had been invested in the south of Pakistan on this topic. And again, the people and the World Bank, whatever, they wanted to do a large investment again. And then our research showed that this interceptor drainage was not the way to do it. It was going to cost a lot of money. It was not useful. And then when my colleague, Dr. Nawaz Bhutta, and myself, we were presenting these findings, in the end, I got at night once a telephone call from Washington saying, why you are disturbing my project, and why are you doing this? Why are you? And then in the end, we could prove that it was not a good investment. So tens of millions of dollars were prevented. Now, it is not money that you have cash in hand, but for sure, the large expenditures had been prevented because we could prove it. But that was one of the first times that science was in the 1990s. Science had to impact on policy to prevent bad things from happening. So, and ever since this is and I asked Mona, where are you from? Which blood group are you? You are from the blood group scientist. I also came from the blood group scientist. And then usually we make projects, nice projects and studies, and we publish it, and then we give it to the people, and then no one reads it. Nothing happens. So we need to make sure that the things that we study and research are giving the right answers to the policymakers, and the policymakers, well, we should address an issue that is important for the policymaker. And if we have the right proof that they should not do things that they were planning to do, then I think we do a great job. So that is one of my experiences.
Yeah, yeah, that's clear indeed. Thanks for sharing also one more example about in practice how you experience this interface. So who would like to now ask a question or maybe share something with us about your own context about how you experience this interface? Yes, Mona, go ahead.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Mr. Wolters. In fact, indeed, we have to give a proof. So I think science have to become familiar with best practicals in political communication. So they have to be more sensibilized to how to transfer and transmit the information to politicians, and how to interact effectively with them, and maybe the quality of the data has to be reliable and more I think the best quality of the data. It's important to defend the point of view of science. And I have a question to Mr. Wolters, is about is it necessary to have some kind of moderator, especially when we have an obstacle arising during discussion, maybe between science and politicians? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mona. My name is Wouter. My name is Wouter. You can address me as Wouter. And the first thing you mentioned was that there should be a type of communication. My experience from various projects is that what we now make at the end of the project, we make science policy briefs. First, we said we are going to make policy briefs, but then the policymakers became very angry because they said, we write the policy brief, we write the policies, you do science. So what we did then, we did a step in between. We did science policy briefs. So we have a format for that. I can also share one of those. So we say the issue and we say the importance of the issue, and then we share our scientific findings. And indeed, you're right. The data on which you base yourself should be right, because you should not talk nonsense. You should have a point that if you do this, then this will happen. So you should consider something else. Now, SPI, Science Policy Interface. The interface is the person that you call a moderator. It can also be a mechanism, say an annual or a half yearly or so dialogue. And then if you have someone in between, here, good. There is a policy brief. Who is sharing this? Is it Inda?
Dina.
Okay, Dina. Yeah, good. Science policy brief. So let me answer the question first, and then we can go to Dina to get her experience on this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just joined this conversation. Maybe later, and there is a trouble in my office.
Do you want to say something now about this policy brief?
No, maybe later, Mr.
Okay, later. Good. So whether you really need can you close your mic if you don't speak? Do you really need a moderator? Well, that depends, because you need a mechanism in between science and policy. But if you know each other and you have met each other before, there is no need for a moderator, because you can just speak freely on what you think, and the politician can also speak freely on what she or he thinks. So moderators, yeah, if you talk about moderate, usually you have a conflict. We should try to avoid the conflict. So we need, in this science policy interface, we need a mechanism, or a knowledge broker, or a dialogue, but not necessarily a moderator. But if you have a working science policy interface, then people know each other, trust each other, and the communication should be going without conflicts. You can change, you can differ of opinion, but not necessarily you need a moderator to moderate the conflict. I hope this answers your question, Mona.
Yes, thank you very much.
Maybe I want to follow up on the point that Mona, you mentioned about the quality of data. And in many cases, for example, the quality of data is not good enough because there's not enough either awareness about how important it is, or there's not enough funding, for example, to collect data using new technologies, or using a bigger sample than what you have. So in most cases, I think also like to have a good acceptance of the role of science by the politician, probably like help to get more funding or more resources towards this research institute or this university to allow them to collect more data. So I think it's like a cycle. So they have to be both accepting the usage of this data to get more support and less resistance into producing it. This is how I also see it. From my side.
I agree, but we are not living in a perfect world.
No.
So at a certain moment, we have to decide, policymakers have to decide on basis of data that may not be the best. But you, from the best of your experience as scientists, you can say, well, based on this, based on what I have seen before, based on what I did before, I advise now on the basis of the data to do this and this. Yeah. So you have to live. Yeah.
If I also can add to that, then I think it's also very important that the communication is very clear, and that you just talk a bit in the same language, that the scientific side communicates in the same language that the policy side understands. Because if the data is very clear, and is, even though if it's very good or less good, the important thing is also that the policymakers understand what you are saying. So I just wanted to add to that also. I find it a very interesting point.
That's indeed. Thanks for that. I see in the chat, Garul wrote something, so I will read it out loud. So one challenge that I found while dealing with policymakers or decision makers is the technicality about the subject. Most of the policymakers comes with limited knowledge on the technical subject, and this makes it worse between these two individuals. Apart from the communication, what other strategies should be adopted to bridge this gap? So he's following up actually on what you just mentioned, Laura. So what kind of recommendation, Wouter, do you have to bridge this gap?
I see in the message of Garul the very normal, common issue is that the policymakers do not have enough knowledge. Well, and then what you need to do is to educate them. You have to show what is important, and the people are usually not stupid. So if you organize a workshop, and you can then show, well, this is the case, this is how it works, this is what happens now, this is a problem. So you just need to educate them, and if it is a problem that they're really concerned about, they will be interested to hear what the scientists have to say about it. So I would say, and this is, in my Egypt example in the interview, I gave various tools, workshops, consultancy missions, trainings, task forces. So if a certain policymaker, you want to convince him that this and this is important, and he has no idea it is important, you have to clear the way for him. Not in a negative way, but in a positive way. Okay, sir, you have a problem with this. what I can do, what we can do as scientists, we can show you how it works and why this is important and why you can take decisions that influence or have a better impact on the work. I hope, Carol, this answers your question. Yeah, okay, Carol.
Yeah,
okay.
he said thank you in the chat.
Yeah, good.
Umber actually has also a follow-up reflection in the chat, so I will also read it out loud. I also feel that there's a lack of knowledge base which is directly applicable to struggling economies, which means that certain best case scenarios don't work in our environment. What to do in such situation?
Yeah, that is good. Struggling economies. You mean there's lack of funding to do certain things, a scarcity of this, a scarcity of that? I would say, if we talk about, this is a multi-level governance. Huh? My experience mostly from water. I would like to say that for governance there are very generic dimensions and principles. So you need trust and engagement, you need effectiveness, you need efficiency, and these factors, I'm not sure, I think we dealt with it before or not, Diana, but what you need from in this case is good governance, because also based on struggling economies or based on not functioning systems, you can still act with transparency and openness and take care of all the interests of the stakeholders. You will. No one said that there will be an ideal situation always. Let me share you an example. The Asian Development Bank, interesting for parts of you as participants, did a large study on water security. And to make it a little bit simple, you have water security in 5 levels. And level 1 is very bad and level 5 is very high. Now, Holland, usually very proud of its water management and so on, it is in level 4. It's not in level 5 because many issues still not ready. So if you look at it from that point of view, from where you are on a global type of scale of the water security, you are in step 2, you can always see what you need to do to get into step 3. And if you are in step 3, you can always see what you need to do to get in step 4. So you have to, it is relative, huh? Your changes are relative. So I would say that if you abide by the principles of good governance, you do the best, you cannot do better. That is my feeling. I hope, Umber, this answers your question.
Yeah, she says thanks in the chat. If you have any follow-up, any of you, one who are just typing, you can just type and then we can go back to your question. So also Michael shared his question, Wouter, in the chat because of connection. So it's a quite long question. I will read it. Okay, so water management is a major issue where decision-making is not decentralized. Knowledge and awareness are lacking in terms of effective and efficient management and population growth on one hand. On the other hand, lack of science policy interface due to information gap, knowledge gap, and coordination gaps, even for decision makers, especially local administrative entities. So this is the description of his context, I assume. So what can you suggest as an approach to address water awareness? Okay, what do you suggest to, an approach to address water awareness as a bridge and thereby allow for human development?
Yeah. Okay, let me, where is it, the question? Yeah, you talked about, Michelle, you talked about not being decentralized. You know, one of the issues in the OECD principles of management is the subsidiarity principle. And that means that you arrange activities and policies at the lowest possible level. So if everything is centralized, you create a big problem. Because if there is a rainstorm in the city where I live now, in Wageningen, and part of the city is a little bit flooded, there is no national policy or no national measure that can help that can do something about it. That is typically something for the municipality at the lower level, or maybe the water board, depending on the origin of water flooding. So if there is no decentralization, everything is centralized, then one step that should be done is applying the subsidiarity principle, doing stuff at the level where it is most appropriate. So local issues arrange local, regional issues regionally, and national issues nationally. For instance, our national safety, national protection against flooding, that is done on basis of national taxes by the national government. But the local flooding of my own city is done by the municipality. So, and this local administrative entity should take their role where they can do it. And awareness is also very important. And I have a nice example of Holland, because there was also an issue on water awareness in the Netherlands. And then there was one smart lady, and she said to the minister, who was always smart, this lady proposed to her, let us put in the news that because of climate change and because of intensive rainstorms, there are certain areas of the Netherlands that we have to flood in a case of flooding, and we choose that and that and that area. That when that message was presented in the news, every talk show was talking about this crazy plan, that why are you flooding this and that? And the plan was not the plan, but the point was to make the people talk about it. And one weather anchor, one weather person who's on the weather news every evening, he was pictured on the beach, sitting in a chair, and he was slowly, being flooded because the water level was getting higher. So if you want awareness, you have to exaggerate maybe what the people see and what they experience. And then if you do that through maybe sometimes a little bit exaggerated stories in the news, then you get attention, and then ministers or mayors or politicians say, what are you talking about? This is nonsense. And then indeed what you proposed was maybe nonsense, but you have their attention and something is to be done. And because if you have a worry on climate change, heat waves, droughts, exaggerate it, bring it in the news, and then you get awareness. And for every country, it is different. In certain cases, you have to spread the news in churches or in mosques. In other parts, you have to maybe go to schools and teach the children about how they treat water. And they will tell their father, who's washing maybe the car with too much water, they'll say, no, you take a bucket and then you wash the car, and you take another bucket, but you don't waste all this water. So, and it looks stupid, but I think that is very good to apply such stuff.
It's funny, Wouter, because indeed I had the same. They learned me in school, and I went out and told my father, "Hey, stop washing the car with a stream of water. Use a bucket." So it's actually how it is.
Huh?
Yeah,
this is proof. Yeah, and then you have discussion in the household.
Yeah.
And the father will like his daughter, and he said, well, I just washed my car. I said, no, you cannot do it. This little girl said, no, you cannot do it. So it's nice. It's nice.
And not annoying little kids telling you what to do. But I see Angita has also a question. Maybe you can ask it out loud if you have a good connection for it.
Yeah, I'll try.
Yeah, perfect.
Hi,
Thank
Ms.
you.
So my question is, it is not always easy to align science and policy, especially because oftentimes science is designed to answer very specific questions, while policy is designed to regulate something that is more general. So how do you tackle that difference?
Yeah, well, it's a very nice example. Thank you for this. And this is typically an example, a demonstration of the disconnect, that the science is doing stuff and the policymakers want something else. Yeah, it doesn't work. So as a scientist, what should be nice if you, say, representing the science, could contact the policymakers and say, okay, what is your biggest worry? Which questions do you want to be solved? And then at first they will not understand you. But if they say what they want, then you can say, this question that you ask now, impossible. We cannot do it. If you phrase your question better, maybe we can help you and we can do this and that. So there should be a two-way process. The scientist has to adjust his or her research to the needs of the politician. And if the politician says, well, I have a problem because next year, then as a scientist, you can think, oh, that's the problem. How can I solve it? Then you make a working group. You sit with several people who represent certain interests in this problem, and then you can discuss with each other how to best address the question of the policymaker, and then you make a plan for a study, and then you present that plan to the policymaker. Say, well, we have been thinking of doing something like this, and then maybe the policymaker, she can say, well, take out this, but I want you to add this. You see, so your mind as a scientist is not the same as the mind of the politician. So if you have a dialogue, if you bridge this gap, then I think you could make big steps. But I hope you understand what I mean. And so you need to, is it possible for you to approach a policymaker? Yeah, you're muted. You're muted. Yeah.
Yeah. That's possible.
And what are you thinking of now? Do you have a specific example in your mind?
No, not very specific. I'm just curious because it's possible to approach them, but it's not easy to have a dialogue. They not really listen to you. They just want to. They just hear you. So it's a bit difficult.
Yeah. So then, are you working at the university or at the research institute or?
No, I'm not.
Where are you working?
Oh, I'm working at a state-owned enterprise, provide government guarantee for infrastructure project, and I'm not currently working on several water projects.
Okay, so if you have a question about the financing of these projects, maybe the chairperson of your state-owned enterprise or the president, or how you call him, he or she can maybe approach the minister or the minister of finance or the policymaker, whatever, and they can see how they can say bridge this gap by themselves, because you see from your position, you see certain things that you think, well, it's not very wise to do this or that. Then a representative of a certain level of your organization can talk with a representative of the government of a certain level. You have to think which levels, and then let them talk. And then if you can get from the policymakers their questions or their worries, and from the science point, from the financing point, you can work on that also, then maybe you can bridge the gap. But in writing emails and writing letters, forget it. You should be on the table, face to face, and choosing the level. Maybe you can organize a symposium. Maybe your state-owned enterprise can organize a webinar or a symposium. Say, well, today we want to discuss this and this and this, and then if these subjects are interesting for the policymakers, you can invite policymaker. Say, well, this is how we view it, and then the policymaker, if it is a good person, he will say, well, this I like, that I don't like, this you should never say to me again, but this is what I want to hear, and then you get the dialogue going, and the point is, you should trust them and they should trust you, and so you need to build a relationship.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your question, Angita, and for the answer, Wouter. Yeah, as you said, you have to have a good politician who's willing to listen And if you remember, like we had in the first part, a change management, like a module where we talked about resistance and taking people on board. So sometimes you have to choose your battle, and it could be that this very high level person is really out of your reach. There's nothing you can do about it, and they're really not willing to listen. But I'm sure there must be someone who you can reach, like to do small steps, and you can have this conversation with him, someone who's a leader in where they work, someone who can help you reach out other people. So keep in mind, like, yeah, who should you talk to? Have many options, not like, oh, this person is unreachable, no, I cannot do anything about it. Always try to network, to see around you who has power, who thinks the same as you, who has the same objective. And I'm sure, like, with small steps, you can start creating some changes when it comes to that. I don't know, I hope it's like useful somewhere. Okay, so I'll continue as in the order of the chat. Jennifer had a question. She's actually first telling us about the situation where she works. She works in the context of Yemen, and she's saying that good science takes time, and policymakers often need quick solutions, and they may think in election cycles and funding cycles. So, what can you recommend to bring those two very different realities together?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. It's a very good question. And let me start by saying that I am appalled by what happens in Yemen at the moment. It is really, I feel very sorry for the people in Yemen who suffer so much from all this. And in that sense, the whole governance situation in Yemen is completely distorted. So, to answer your question in the context of Yemen is very difficult, because first, there should be a ceasefire. The shooting and the bombing should stop. People should get medicine and water and food. So that is the first thing, it's very much emergency thing. But indeed, having said that, good science takes time and policymakers often need quick fixes. That is true. So you need to convince the policymakers of things that are happening. Let me give you an example. The example of climate change, because climate change in the Netherlands, it is happening, but it is not urgent in the coming 4 years. So a politician can easily survive without doing too much on climate change. But there was a group of scientists, a well-respected scientist, and they painted a picture of the situation in Holland after 100 years. And it was a little bit the same as with the flooding. They exaggerated the impacts. They said the water table in 100 years around our country will be 2 meters higher, and the temperature will be so much higher, and they painted a very grim picture. And there was a lot of discussion, and there were many scientists saying, it is not 2 meters, we made calculations, it's only 90 centimeters, But the issue was not about the 90 centimeters or about the 1 meter. The issue was to get it on the political agenda. And the good outcome of this is that now in the government, there is the understanding that climate change is important for the Netherlands. It is a long-term effect, and what we should do, we should look ahead. And we should, because it's not urgent. It's not urgent to do something about climate change, but it is acute. We have to act now. If we build a structure, if we build a house, if we build a water treatment plant, whatever, we have to think of the consequences of climate change impact in 20, 30 years, because we build for the future. So everything you do, your measures and your infrastructure should be climate proof. So the first thing is you have to convince the policymakers of certain issues that have long-term effects. And then once you have done that, and there are tricks to do that, then you can look at what is really needed, and also this funding, because in Holland we are partly living below sea level, so our dikes, our sea defenses are very important. If we don't have these dikes, we will drown. So safety is in the genes, in the DNA of all the Dutch people. Safety against flooding. So now because of this Delta Committee on climate change, we have a program on climate change and water management and what have you. It's quite a story, but we could have a separate hour on that, but that's not the issue. And for this program, basically every year 1 billion, so 1,000 million euros is set aside. Not that it can be just thrown away, this money, no. There have to be plans to be made, but the money to work on this is available. So now there are all kinds of innovative ideas and also infrastructure developments going on. Yeah, I could continue, but maybe, I hope, Jennifer, this answers your question.
I hope too. You can let us know in the chat. I want actually to also share something with you, because now I'm hearing Wouter explaining all of this, creating the awareness, the desire, and all. If you also remember, we discussed something called the ATCAR model. Do you remember that? So it's how you can push people to change. And I've just now actually tried to copy this framework again, and I am putting it on one slide. And someone nod to let me know if you see it. Yeah. Yes, you see it. Okay. So indeed, I'll just gonna go through it very fast. Many things that you are now referring to in your question. How can I convince this person? What if I face resistance? How can I do the change, right? So indeed, like everything that Wouter was describing, there are small steps that you have to do. And we talked a bit about this in this ATCAR model. So you have to start by awareness. So what are you doing, right? So so here we are talking about the policy science. So why do you need, as a scientist, for example, what are you trying to do? Why do you need more communication? And then you have to try to create desire from the policymakers to make them really wanting to be part of this interface, to take place in this project, to work differently with you. And then knowledge, perhaps, as also Wouter said, you might need to create a training so people know how in their policy, what should they address, what do they want from you. And then you have to create ability, so to create actual opportunities for this dialogue, for these conferences, and at the end, reinforcement. If you see change happening, you have to try to support it, to celebrate it, to tell about it. So you have many small steps that you can take, and I think you have to take them gradually, and in most cases to try to start step by step, and just to do some change, because talking with politicians, trying to change a way that things have been taking place in a certain way for ages is not easy. Like, I understand where all of these questions come from, and therefore you have to start thinking with small steps. This is something I wanted to share with you, because we talked about it, and we'll also ask you in your back home action plan to reflect on all the actions that in the first part you identified, and to see, are they really feasible? What should I do? Which small steps should I take? So I don't know if you agree, Wouter, on like thinking in this way, but I think it's really gradual, it's small, and you have to start from analyzing where you are and starting from there.
I agree with you, because if you look at the whole thing, it becomes very complex and very difficult. So you have to cut it up into small steps that you can do, small steps that are within your influence. Like if Jennifer wants to change the situation in Yemen, sorry, but you will not be able to change the current situation. So you can only do what you can do. Yeah. And if you take certain steps, then, and especially in the context of your back home action plan, I think it's very good to think about what your sphere of influence is, and what you can do, and what your steps could, maybe small steps, doesn't matter, but what your steps can really make an impact. Yeah.
Okay, let's continue with the questions. Umber asked you a question. Since you worked in Pakistan, Wouter, maybe you could share your general observation of your experience there when it comes to the topic that you are discussing.
Yeah, are you from Pakistan, Umber? Yeah?
Yeah, right?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was working in the International Waterlog and Salinity Research Institute in the WAPDA in Lahore, in Dhokar Niazbek. And our research was pointing to the fact that this investment should not be done. And then the Director General of my institute, he went alone to the Secretary of Water and Power, Ghulam Mustafa Kar, and he is a famous person, not always nice if you read the books of his wife, Temina Durrani, but that's another issue. But my colleague, Dr. Nawaz Bhutta, he could convince the Secretary of Water and Power not to spend this money, because this money was loans from the World Bank. So if you borrow, 30 million, 40 million from dollars from the World Bank, you have to pay it back. So in that sense, I think we did a great job. It was not easy. Another small example, we did something great, we thought, with the developing rural communities. And then we went also to the ministry and said, well, we have found something nice. We can assist people to develop their own water management stuff and so on. And then he said, okay, how many billions of rupees do you need for 3,000 villages? And we said, yeah, we did one village and we carefully selected this village. 3,000 villages, it's impossible, because the scale of everything in Pakistan is huge. It's a huge country. So my idea also was that we could do something in terms of local development, but then the minister had a completely other focus. He said, okay, if you can do it for one village, how much money you need for 3,000 villages? And we said, sorry, sir, we cannot do it. So we disappointed the politician because we could not do it. It was too difficult for us. I hope this answers your question also, Umber.
Yes, I think I have a very good idea of what you're talking about, because I also work in the government. So I can actually literally imagine you in that situation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I met very nice people in Pakistan. I worked with very nice people. It's a beautiful country, and I met very nice people. And also, you are like Jennifer and the people in Yemen. They are in their situation. We are in our situation. You in Pakistan and your situation, and every situation is different. So you do what you can do. Yeah.
Thank you.
If I may ask.
Sorry.
Where are you working?
I'm working in the government, in the administration. So the secretary you're talking about, these all are of the administrative service. I'm part of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your question and for telling us about Pakistan and your experience, Wouter. For now, if I'm not mistaken, I still have two questions. One is of Hugh Drossel, but I will read it, but I think we already answered it. So if you have a follow-up on it, you can just speak and let us know. So she's also asking that we mentioned many times that scientists and policymakers speak different languages. What can we do about it? So
let me ask Drossel, are you a scientist or a politician?
No, I'm working in a water project.
As a water expert?
Technician.
Yeah. And this project, are you convinced that it is doing the right things?
Yeah, if it is the things which are done in the appropriate manner, I say. But when it is not in a good manner, I can tell and try to search for the solution to make it better.
But are the politicians convinced that this is a good project?
Yes. Yeah.
And the scientists
at the
also?
Local level.
Is there any resistance from the science people for this project?
Yeah, I think my project is at the local level.
Yeah, but are there NGOs knocking on your door and saying you are disturbing my village and you are wasting my water and so on? Is that happening?
No.
Hey, maybe you are in the ideal project then. Everything is moving right, because I think it is. I'm talking about this different languages because I hope that your project solves a certain problem or is supporting a certain development. And if it's going in the right way, it's okay. And then the investigations that have led to this project have been done properly. Yeah. then there's no problem. And then in that case, the scientists and the politicians were agreeing.
Mhm. The problem we like to have in our project is concerned about the water users. We have seen yesterday that at the local level, the water users think always that the water is a gift from the God. So it's the the problem we like to account in our project. But
And you want them to pay for the water.
yeah, for the
they,
sustainability, for the water
yeah.
sustainability.
And they don't like to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this issue was, of course, known when you started the project. So what have scientists said about the fact that the farmers should pay? Were they asked whether they were ready to pay?
No, they don't have. They are not interested. They think that they must not pay it. But
Yeah,
for
but
the
were they
policy,
asked? Could they vote for the project? Could they say we want it, or it was just imposed on them? You know,
no,
we cannot go through your project all the time, but by asking such questions, you can see whether you can find whether this is 100% right or 90% right or 80% right. Because if the farmers do not want to pay, your project has a problem, and the politicians also have a problem. And maybe there were some scientists who said, you know, these farmers will never pay. So then the project might have been designed differently if the scientists and the politicians had discussed before. Because now this discussion, as I feel, has not been completely not been completely completed, has not been done. So now you have a project, and the politicians will say, you, the project manager, you should make sure that they pay, and the farmers will say, forget it, I'm not going to pay. So you have an issue that maybe you could have seen before. Just by I know nothing about your project, so I can just, but as a general observation.
yeah,
Thank you for bringing in this point. Yeah, thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, indeed. And when we started to talk about good governance, if you remember, one principle was that it's inclusive and participatory. So indeed, like the more you talk with all the stakeholders about their need and their perspective about the project, the more you know, and the more it will help you in the future to not face resistance, because you try to address as much as possible, of course, with the power and the money you have, everyone's need and opinion, which is also difficult. But yeah. It's about inclusive governance, indeed. So Michael had also a question. I will try to reformulate it as I understood it, but please feel free to jump in if I said it wrong. So I think he's asking, is there like a guide that countries where these links between science and knowledge are missing? Is there like a guide or like a publication or a framework to read and to follow?
Yeah, well, I think the two things that I submitted as base material are there. I'm not sure what Michael would like to know more. Basically, you can start with wondering what keeps the politicians awake. What is their biggest worry? Because if they have a big worry, they need a solution to solve this problem. And then if science can step in, then you know you can have a go on this. I hope this is enough. I can think about it. But if you read the material that is available now in the Moodle, then I think maybe you can put in the forum a follow-up question or so we can take a look at it.
Was that your question correctly? I asked it? Yeah? Okay. Then you can always follow up in the forum if you like.
By predicting policies, I mean to prevent impacts. Yeah. Okay. Preventing impacts. Yeah. Well, that is something that the scientists can do. The scientists can do a study on climate change, and they can see, okay, the rainfall will in 30 years, 40 years will change in that sense. Temperature will change in that sense. Water availability will change in that sense. So then you can predict, forecast, predict how this different stuff, but at least you can say what will happen in the future. And for those points, then the policymaker should make policy. So if a scientist can predict what is going to happen, then you know, possibly negative impacts can be prevented. And it's also difficult how you post it. For instance, for Pakistan and the say the Himalaya context, we did some studies, and one of the outcomes was that in 20 years, the yield of wheat will be 40% less from now. And then people got, what? In 20 years, the wheat will be 40% less productive. That is a big problem. You know, you can talk about things, but they don't understand. But if you present it in stuff that they can understand, then they wake up and then they think, ooh, we need to do something about it. Maybe you can do something, maybe not. But at least if you predict what will happen, then you know, you can look ahead. Maybe I can also share this this stuff. The project's called High Aware. Okay, I will see if I will send it to Diana, and Diana, you can put it on the Moodle, I hope.
Yeah. Inda, do you want to share what you said in public? So it's not me only talking. So you think participation is very important, right?
Yeah. I mean, in my experience in Indonesia, we really sometimes the science is not only the basis of a policy. The other side, we also have to hear the public. For example, to manage the water resources, sometimes based on science, this location is fit to be a water resources that can be developed, but then the people around the water resources, they just don't want the scientists or people from us, like from drinking companies, to interfere their area, and sometimes the science will be contrary with the public opinion. So I would like to ask Mr. Wouter, have you ever experienced this kind of situation, and how to manage the situation?
Yeah, we have now currently an issue in Holland, and maybe also in your country, maybe in all the countries, that the science will say that people need to get the vaccine against this coronavirus. And there are people who just don't buy it. So their public opinion, for some people, this public opinion says we don't want it. It is dangerous, and you get a chip in your blood, and you become magnetic, and you get autism, and what have you. So the science is clearly not in balance with the public opinion. What we do in Holland about this specific situation is we try to educate the people. We try to discuss in their own language. We go to them with a bus. We go to them their houses, because there are certain groups who only take their knowledge from YouTube and from wherever, but not from the official science. And then, you know, we try to reach them, and we try to explain, well, this is not possible. The vaccine is not dangerous. We tested on 1 million people. So you have to convince the people. Now, this is not related to water, but I can imagine that if the public opinion, if the people are against the project, maybe there's a reason that they don't want it. And we have problems like this in Holland also, because we need energy from wind. We need energy from these windmills. Now everybody wants wind energy, but no one wants it in his own back garden. So yeah, so the science says we need it, but no one wants such a windmill in his garden. So they say, well, you put it with the neighbors. Huh? So yeah, there we have to find locations where we can do this, because you cannot do something against the will of the people if there is a better solution. So in certain ways, there was the need to develop roads in Holland, infrastructure, and the people were very much against these action groups and so on. But you know, it was fought in the court, and the judge also said we need to do this infrastructure. We need these roads, otherwise our country gets stuck. So at a certain moment, the people also have to go away and to allow this thing to happen. We also have we had land consolidation in Holland, where an area was being developed because the farms were small, and the accessibility of the roads was not good, and the plots of the farms are so small that there could not be mechanized labor and so on. So then the idea in Holland was that we make a plan together with the farmers, and then if 75% of the land ownership is in favor of this development plan, it's going to happen. If there is no such 75% available or in agreement of the plan will simply not go ahead. So, but you will always have some people who say, I don't want it. So in this 25% that people are against it, yeah, in a certain moment, if 75% has said we need it, we are going ahead, then 25% of the people are more or less forced to go with the plan, because you cannot, there's not one or two farmers that can obstruct the whole plan. So this is a delicate issue, and usually you do this by convincing people and by showing the truth. Because if you don't show the truth, then also people will never buy.
Yes, and speaking back of part one, also remember when we talked about citizen participation, information was the first step on the ladder of participation. So you have always to start with giving enough information and then try to go into consultation to understand what people think of it, and then move maybe to ask them to come with ideas to recommendation. And we said that, yeah, not everything is applicable or correct in any cases, but you have options in how you can involve your citizen, but information is always the first one indeed that has to be applied. And Garul also shared an example confirming what you're saying now from his professor when he was studying in Singapore. The professor encouraged them and his colleague to always have continuous dialogue with the public, and said that it really worked to formulate good policies. So that's a nice example. Thanks, Garul. Let's see. Jennifer is going back, Wouter, to the interview. And you said in the interview that the drought monitoring system in the Netherlands is publicly available. Is this like a way that we can have a look at it? Is it like a website or something like that?
Yeah, I will see how I can do it. Much is in Dutch.
Isn't it Dutch? Oh, okay.
And, but I will see it, because I have a publication that I may be able to share. It's not formally possible for me to share it, but individually I may be able to do it. I will take a look.
Okay, yeah, on a website or so,
yeah.
Even in Dutch.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just now reading through the chat. I see that Jawad also gave an idea of how you communicate maybe your data with policymakers or even people to make them more acceptable. So instead of saying you will do something that will change 40% in 40 years, if you say 1% per 1 year, sounds more not friendly, but yeah, more immediate. Like you show, it's more convincing to use it. So I think also framing the way we say things is also important. I don't know if this is what you meant, Jawad, but I think so. If not, yeah, please feel free to speak up.
I think Mona also had a comment. Could you maybe elaborate on it? Feel free to talk. We're in a conversation, so I invite everyone who is able just to raise their hands.
I have to, it's important to focus on the role of the media. I mean, media is can be a very important part of this interface to communicate. To influence and maybe to facilitate the comprehension of projects or the ideas.
Yeah, the media are important, but there is also a trend now in the world, And we saw that in the administration of United States, but I also see it in my own country, that some people say, oh, journalist is fake news. They don't give the right picture and so on. I'm not sure whether it's in your country also, but we need to be sure of open communication and of really the proper views. There should be freedom of expression. Everybody should be able to share the news, and in a proper way.
I find it always difficult that people start doubting what is real, like what you just said. Like if you start doubting everything that it could be fake news, then it's difficult to bring over the right message. So I feel that, like what you said, in our country, I also feel that right now with, for example, the vaccinations, but it can also be before we had it more with climate change, that people maybe because of others exaggerating of a lot of different facts and numbers, people get insecure what is actually true, and then therefore they get very insecure about what is happening, and they prefer to refuse it or not to have to think about it.
Yeah, and you have some crazy people on the earth. Huh? There is a flat Earth society. People who think the Earth is flat. It's not a sphere. No, it's flat. And convince them that the Earth is flat is very difficult. So I am convinced the Earth is a sphere, but some people think the Earth is a flat. So some things you cannot just contest.
No, that's true. Okay. I don't see any more questions or comments. I think we covered everything. Anyone still want to say anything about the topic, or anyone with the last question before we conclude? Or anything you want to say? Anything Wouter wants to say to close?
Well, I think this was a very nice discussion, and we could tackle upon many points. And I can share maybe a nice anecdote. Once I was involved in a refresher course on drainage in Pakistan, and after this course, after 2 weeks, one guy raised his hand and he said, "Before I came here, I was confused about drainage. And now, at the end of this course, I'm still confused about drainage, but at a much higher level." So, we are now talking about science policy interface and so on. Maybe we are a little bit less confused, but we are continuing learning. So after all this thing that we did in this course, you are still confused about multilateral governance and social and science policy interface and what have you, but at a much higher level. So we just keep on learning. We learn from each other. I learn from you, you learn from me, we learn from each other. And that is, I think, a nice way to look at the discussions also this afternoon. We learn from each other, and there's always new stuff to learn.
Indeed, that's a good closure, I think. I don't have much else to add. Yeah, Jennifer is like clapping. So thank you very much, Wouter. Thank you all for being present with us this afternoon, for being active. I was happy to see you. I will not see you face to face this week anymore. I'll be working on your homework assignment and back home action plan in the background. So I'm also looking forward to see what you will write. And Wouter will also have a look at your homework assignment, which is not very difficult, so don't worry. And we meet all together also with Wouter on the last Friday of the closing event to reflect on everything we've been saying here, and to close the course together. So until then, I hope you enjoy the remaining days and that everyone stays safe and happy. And thank you very much again, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for being here.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.